Let me just briefly welcome everybody for a minute, and then I'm going to let Michael go ahead and get started because I know he has a lot to cover and we want to get through it. So I think I've introduced myself to everyone, but my name is Renee Katakalos. I'm the Executive Director of the AIA Potomac Valley Chapter. So we are the local chapter that covers the suburban counties of Maryland outside of DC. And we are very happy tonight that Torty Gallus, one of our member firms, is hosting us. And we thank Omer Mushawar here, who's their IT director and an associate member of our chapter, for helping us do this and setting up our webinar as well. While actually everyone participating tonight is here in person, we do have a program with them where once a month they actually let us have people sign in as through webinars, some of their in-house lunch and learns, and then we record those, and we're in the process of making those available to other chapter members as a resource. So this particular presentation will be one of those recordings that will be available for people to look at later as well. So you're being recorded. Don't heckle Michael too badly. So anyway, feel free to help yourself to refreshments while things are going on. I don't know if everyone heard that the restrooms are straight down that hallway and on the right. And
the ladies' room is right past the front desk, so
it's no further. But I think with that, I'm going to turn to Michael Daly, who is the Architectural Licensing Advisor for both the AIA Potomac Valley Chapter and for the state of Maryland. And he is going to have resources and some Q&A at the end. And we've also got some a few resources on the table over there about membership in AIA that you can look at the end if you like as well. So, Michael, thank you.
So as Renee said, my name is Michael Daly. I am the chapter licensing advisor and the state licensing advisor. So through NCARB, all the state licensing advisors go once every year or two to gather and learn all of this information. For me, I go a little bit beyond just the programs, and I talk about the process of how I got through the exams and some tips and tricks. So I go a lot deeper than what you'd get from a typical NCARB presentation. So it's going to be, we're going to break this up into essentially three parts. The first half hour, 40 minutes or so, is going to be about the AXP program. We're going to take a break, and then the second part is going to be delving deeper into the exams, talking about the 4.0 exams that are ending soon, and then going into the 5.0 exams and how you work between the two in regards to resources and some kind of best practices. Then we'll break again, and then there's a couple individuals who are going to come up and join me, give a couple of their experiences taking the exams, and then we'll just open it up for just a discussion, any questions you have about the process. So here's my information. Please feel free to contact me at any time. I'm always available to help people in this process. This will be up a couple times towards the end, and it'll be up again at the end. Just see me at the end if you didn't get it down. So, but I'm gonna go through this fairly quickly. It's a lot of information to cover. And then if you have any questions, you can ask them, but it'd be good to talk more at the end. Just keep a note of everything. So what are licensing advisors? We talked a little bit about it. We're the resource for the components of licensure. Again, we're trained by NCARB. We work through the AIA chapters, and we're given the information directly from the source so that we can pass that information on directly to you. Now, there's a few different types of them. Every university for architecture has a licensing advisor. Every one of the chapters has a licensing advisor, and then there's a state licensing advisor who kind of oversees all of them. Some firms also, larger firms, will also have a firm advisor sometimes, and even students can become an advisor. Pretty much, if you want to be an advisor, go right ahead, contact NCARB, and they'll get you set up. So there's a few other places that you can get information. You can always go to NCARB. They're very accessible to get any information that you need. There are definitely some really great communities that they've created, a YouTube channel and such, and I can show you some other places later if needed. So why do you guys want to earn a license? Here's a few things. It's kind of straight from NCARB. There's definitely a benefit to doing it. It's going to give you all these elements. It's going to help you if you're interviewing for a new job. It's going to help you potentially advance your career. One of the big things, this is probably the most important one, that in the state of Maryland, and pretty much, I think most jurisdictions, if you want to start your own firm, you have to be licensed. In the state of Maryland specifically, you need to have either 2/3 of partnership be licensed, and also 67% of the partners need to be licensed. So if you ever have a desire to become a principal within a firm or hang your own shingle, this is the process that you need to go through. Everybody's gone through a very similar process, even the people who went through the full 4 days, 12-hour design process at the very end, to people today doing the ARE 5.0, where it all is the same information, broken up differently. Everybody had to do the same or a similar experience program. So there's a handful of organizations that you need to work with to get through the licensing process. Obviously, you need to go through a university program to get an accredited degree, or in cases like Maryland, you don't have to have an accredited degree. You can actually do it without a license at all. And I'm not going to delve too much into that. If you guys want to talk to me later about that, I've talked to a couple who either have a foreign situation or a non-accredited degree or no degree at all. But everybody, including those individuals, have to go through the 3 E's of architecture. Does anybody know what those 3 E's are?
Education.
There you go.
Experience. I'm just making this up.
No, education, experience,
Examination.
and examination.
There we go.
So those are the 3 E's. Everybody has to go through that. If you've gone through a foreign country, then your education portion of it is going to be different. But everybody either has to get the degree or gain experience in lieu of the degree. Everybody has to go through the experience program, and everybody has to take the exams. Once you've done all 3 of those, then you qualify for getting your license within that jurisdiction that you applied for. Then there's another process later if you want to get reciprocal licensure. I'm not going to get into that. NCARB's website can get into all of that, and it's a fairly simple process once you're licensed. And I'll go a little bit into the end of this first part about NCARB certification. So there's 54 jurisdictions. They all have different rules and regulations. NCARB's website also has a really great tool to go through each one of the jurisdictions' requirements for registration. On top of just the licensure registration, sometimes there's practice requirements. As an example, Virginia not only requires you to be licensed, but if you want to practice there, your firm has to be licensed in Virginia before you're even allowed to solicit work. Pennsylvania, on the other hand, you can solicit work there, you can try to get work, and once you land a project, then you can go ahead and get licensed. They're a lot more lenient. NCARB's website actually does a good job of going through all of those requirements as well. And here's kind of an example of their tool. Initial registration, you can click on any of the states and it'll highlight a bunch of their requirements. Reciprocal registration, if you're already licensed in a jurisdiction, click on any of the states and it'll tell you how you get reciprocal licensure. Same thing with renewal. And then that last one, practice requirements, is again where you would go if you're going to be doing work on your own. Definitely want to hit that one, because the one thing you do not want to do is solicit work or practice in a state that you are not licensed. When you do get your license, you are licensed in the state that you got your initial license. So for me, I'm licensed in the state of Maryland, the state of Virginia, and the District of Columbia. If I go out to Iowa, I can't technically tell people that I'm an architect. I can say I'm an architect licensed here, but I cannot solicit work in that state. And that's a very important thing for you to remember and just keep in the back of your mind. One of the reasons why getting an NCARB certificate is important. So the education portion of it, kind of talked a little bit about the NAB accredited degree. All 54 jurisdictions require that. It'd be a BARC, an MARC, or a PhD in ARC. Typically considered the happy path, just because it's the easiest path towards licensure. Combination of degree and experience, or experience and only. Pretty much all the states that allow you to do experience only. With a high school degree, you can work for 12 years under a licensed architect, and you will qualify for sitting for the exams. That's kind of the Frank Lloyd Wright path. And Daly and John Puss, and some of them pretty much are not, they have no education at all. So, but they are architects. They technically went through that path before a path like that existed. Now, one of the nice things that NCARB has is they've got guidelines for pretty much anything. So if you have any questions about the education portion of it, then you can go there, download their education guidelines. This is where you're going to find some of your information in regards to some of the alternate paths. They'll have some of that within there. So I like throwing this into here just to touch on it very briefly. Since everybody in here is working towards licensure, this idea of intern architect and how it's kind of a bad word now. Now, every single jurisdiction, this is a map of kind of what in their state laws allow you to say what you are in that state. So in Maryland, the technical term would be intern. It's different all sorts of other places. AIA finally, I think about a year or two ago, came up with two, one of which was, I think, architect in training or something. I'm not even sure what the two that they came up with, but in reality, nobody cares. I put this in here because if you're out with your friends, people are going to ask you, so what do you do? Or you meet somebody, you can say, I'm an architect. No police aren't going to come out. You're not going to get arrested. Just don't solicit services. That's the big thing that they really care about. It's a lot easier to say, yeah, I'm an architect, or I work in architecture, than to say, I'm an intern architect who's 2 exams through the process, and I've got 3 more years of experience before I'm in. Nobody cares. It's not that big of a deal unless you're soliciting for work. That's where it becomes a big problem. So on to the experience program, which is the bulk of what this first part is. So the second E is the experience program, and it used to be called IDP. Now it's called AXP. And here's pretty much one of the questions, and this is a little bit of a trick question because I'll add on. Do you guys know the answer of what this program is? A, B, or C? Well, just the base program, what NCARB requires is the bare minimum for you to become, to finish the experience program. It is A. Used to be B, and it used to be C, but it is actually A. 3,740 hours. Some people ask, is it 1 year, 2 years, 3 years? It could be 10 years. At the end of the day, it's 3,740 hours. Now, B and C are technically correct in some jurisdictions. This is from July 2016. I like it because it's still kind of messy. It's more solid blue at this point, and the goal is NCARB would like it to be purely solid blue. Solid blue means that you are only required to do 3,740 hours. But if you want reciprocal licensure in other jurisdictions, like Virginia requires 3 years. So even if you finish 3,740 while you're in school and a year after school, you need to work for 3 full years outside of your education to meet their requirements. Some require the 3-year duration plus an additional. So some just require the 3 years. Virginia is one of the big ones that require not only an additional 1860. So you need to do the full 5,600 and 3 years. So what I would suggest that even if you are working through the process and you hit your hours, keep logging them until you hit 3 years or 5,600 hours, and technically both. Because if you reach both and you hit all of that, you will never have any problems with any of the jurisdictions. But just know that in most jurisdictions, 3,740 is the absolute minimum to finish that program. So, and with that 3,740 hours, there are 96 tasks. And within the AXP guideline, they go through each of the 6 different sections of the program, and each one of them has very specific tasks. Your mentor and supervisor should be working with you to fulfill all of those, because they technically shouldn't sign off on your hours unless you're fulfilling those. And if you've already fulfilled those and you're still doing hours, you really should be getting them to help you get other sections. It's actually unethical for a supervisor to just sign off. Say you're doing toilet details for 3 years. They should not be just signing off on all of your time. And I've actually had to deal with situations where a candidate has called me complaining about their boss, and I've talked to the boss. The boss has full right to deny any hours that you do if you've already fulfilled those hours. Now, we'll get into some of this a little bit about what you do in a situation like that. So for time's sake, I'm not going to delve into the specifics of the exam. So, but of the various AXP sections of it, but there's really 2 main settings that you need to worry about with the program. You have experience setting A, which is working directly under an architect, and then experience setting O. So practice of architecture, minimum of 1,860 hours, which is half of the program, or essentially about a year or so of work. No matter what, you have to fulfill that many hours under a licensed architect. You can do all of your hours under a licensed architect, but that is the minimum that you need to have. Now, for people who don't have the are not working for a licensed architect and are working for somebody else, there's a bunch of experience here that you can do. So here's the breakdown of the amount of hours that you need to meet that. So not only do you need to hit 3,740, but it needs to be in a minimum of all of these sections. You can get the guide from NCARB. I also have it on a disc that I'll be giving you, has all of the current guides. So you'll have that information at the ready. And then you can go into deeper on how many hours there are. Obviously, there's a lot more hours in the construction document side than there is in practice management. So it makes sense in a younger practitioner's career at this stage to have this breakdown of experience. So say you're not working for an architect, there are ways to gain experience now, which there didn't used to be. And this is a nice thing that came out within the last 10 years, and it's kind of evolved over time. You can work under other types of licensed professionals, so which will fulfill pretty much all of the rest of that. So if you're working for an architecture firm under a licensed architect, or working under a foreign licensed architect, that can cover half of that time. But again, that's just the maximum hours. You still need that other half under an architect. Less hours for all of these other categories. And so under another licensed professional, you can actually get 320 hours for actually working construction. In the last handful of years, few years, they've decided that working for a contractor and actually swinging a hammer counts as experience in relation to this profession. You can volunteer your time, and there's certain organizations under their website that you can find that you'd be able to volunteer for. Habitat for Humanity, various organizations like that can count for some of that time. Say you're in between jobs, there are ways for you to get experience through volunteering. Getting certified, the CSI exam will give you 40 hours in one of the categories. It's an exam, if you're not familiar, that's very similar to the old CDS, the construction exam, the construction documents and services exam, and then the portion of the new exam. So if you're looking for that credential, it can actually count for some of your hours. If you do design competitions, you can have either a supervisor or you can have a mentor who can sign off on the work that you have done as part of competitions. Say you're in between jobs again, you can work, find a competition, do the work, show this mentor the breadth of the work, have them verify that you put all that time in, and then they can sign off on that time, which is a very good way for people to gain experience. Very small one, NCARB's Professional Conduct Monograph. You can download that, read through that whole thing, and then there's a little quiz, and then you can actually get 16 hours of that. Another quick little way. One of the things that's really good through the AIA chapters is actually doing site visits. You can actually gain some hours doing that as well. Again, so here's the construction work. The one that I was looking at before. Okay, so this was just the ancillary experience with landscape architects or engineers. This one here, you can actually swing a hammer and gain experience.
I'm sorry, I should have made this before, but what about, can you do past things? Can you get prior employers to sign off on?
There's a limit to it. And so, and again, for time's sake, and I'll get to that, I have a slide that does specifically talk about that. I'm not going to delve into the very specifics of each of these exams or each of these experience areas. And this ties in directly to the ARE exams. What NCARB has done, I'll just give you the 6 different sections. The IDP program used to have 20 or 30 different categories, and then they whittled it down, and then they massaged it and changed it. What they've done is they've pared it down to 6 specific areas that kind of follows the life cycle of the process of a project. Practice management really deals with and this kind of goes into some of the ARE stuff. They kind of go hand in hand. You do not need to fulfill certain areas in here before you can take that exam on the ARE if you're doing them concurrently. You can fulfill your hours in any order and take your exams in any order. That's a very common question that comes up. But practice management is really about how pre-contract, how firms are run, all the aspects that you would get from how staffing works, human resources, a lot of the elements of practice management. Project management is then on the side of dealing with contract language and within the context of how a project is run from beginning to end, and kind of somewhat pre-design or the early stages of it. You get into the kind of the programming and analysis. The next 3 are really kind of schematic design, design development, and construction documentation, and the last one is then CA, kind of rolls in together. They very heavily overlap, and it gets kind of muddy in some of what's covered on what. The best thing to do is to go and use these categories for the AXP to help you see what you need to learn to kind of fulfill your experience in that category, which also coincides with what they examine on that exam. So going between the two guides will really help you get a sense of some. I'll go into it a little bit, but this is really the foundation of what you need to get experience in and then what you're going to get examined on. So these are just the breakdown of those 96. This is straight out of the AXP guidebook that's on the disc and on NCARB's website. So here's your reporting requirements. What you do is you get a 6-month reporting period for your work that counts as full-time. Technically 8 months because they give you a 2-month window to report that experience. So really 8 months ago from today, you can get 100% of your experience credit. Anything that you've done prior to that, up to 5 years, you'll get 50% credit. So if you've been working for a good while and you haven't started your AXP program yet, you'll be able to document 5 years of experience, but you'll only get partial credit for anything past 8 months. This is a very important slide here because they do take it very seriously. Anything past that 5 years is lost. So the idea is if you do not have an NCARB record, and even if you don't plan on taking the exams for a good while, start the NCARB record now. You're going to pay a little bit every year, but at least you won't ever have that chance of losing any of those hours. So supervisors and mentors. These are the people that are going to be able to sign off on all of your experience. There's a difference between the two. Supervisors are the ones that have direct control over your work. They are your boss or your boss's boss or somebody who you directly report to for all of your work. Mentors are people that can be your peers. They can be people that you used to work for. They can be people who are at AIA chapters. Various people. You can pretty much have anybody who would kind of meet certain requirements can be that. And if you have a question about whether something counts as a mentor, contact myself. You can even contact, sometimes the people within the AIA chapters will know whether it will count or who can do that for you, or just go directly to NCARB and ask them, and they'll be able to help you. The big difference between them, a supervisor can also be a mentor. So anything that a mentor can do, a supervisor can do. They're kind of the higher level. I look at it as this is the person that you're working with, and this is the person that you're complaining about the work that you're doing. So they're somebody that can just be a friend who's licensed or somebody that you used to work with, a peer and colleague. A lot broader for this person, but this person has various different things that they can help you with. They're also, NCARB is spending time within the last year and in the coming year or two trying to develop this a little bit further to define some more scopes and actually get more requirements, because people a lot of times will have some issues with their supervisors and how to get them signing off on everything. This is something that NCARB is looking at to develop a little bit further. But right now, and the website does go a little bit deeper into who can sign off for what, and all those O settings give you information in there about who's able to sign off on each of those individual O sections. The A section is pretty much going to be a supervisor for the most part, but if you've left the job and are getting experience, then that person would just be a mentor, but they are still licensed in the jurisdiction. So reporting your experience, you can actually go through the AXP website, or you can actually download the app, which is a very easy way. Once you have it on your phone, you can go ahead and as you're logging everything in, as you're doing things, you can get it logged in. What I would do is you'll want to work this out with your supervisor and what your best kind of reporting period is. You don't want to inundate them with your experience so that they're having to review these things all the time. It's just going to really get on their nerves. Talk to them if they want you to be reporting it every week, every month. As long as you're within that 8-month window, nobody's going to care. I wouldn't wait that long, but I think once a month is probably a good rule of thumb of when you should be logging all of your hours in to make sure that it gets reported, because then it'll give your supervisor a chance to see what you've done. And this kind of coincides with making sure you're getting all of those different categories and fulfilling what you need to do to finish the program. So this is just the main website that you would go to get all of this information. The AXP experience is going to have that in, all the guide under there. ARE is going to have it under there. Your login is where you're going to go in if you guys aren't signed up yet for it, where you're going to log in all of that experience. So if you're not enrolled in the program yet, and this wouldn't apply to anybody in here, but just for anybody out there who might be watching this, the eligibility date used to be around your second or third year of architecture school, and what they've done is they've changed it a handful of years back to high school graduation. So the day that you graduate high school, you can actually enroll in the AXP program, and you can start logging hours. And there's this new movement towards the licensure upon graduation, or the term that they officially have for that. That is in getting people so that by the time they graduate from their program, they've not only got their education, they've done the experience, and they've taken the exams. And this is one of the things that can help. So all those summers between school years that you're working for a firm or working construction, a lot of that time counts for people these days. Here's where the costs come in. So even if you know you're not going to be taking these exams anytime soon, what you'll want to do is go ahead and sign up. It's really not that big of a fee. So your record fee will include your first transmittal to begin the ARE, but if it does take you a while before you fulfill those requirements for whatever reason, you just have an $85 annual fee until you get through the process. And it's very, very straightforward. They've simplified it. It used to be much more convoluted. So here's a situation that I kind of mentioned where if you are working for somebody, you're doing toilet details for 1.5 years and you're not fulfilling your requirements, what do? You got to talk to your supervisor or boss. Here's a big one. I actually advised this one individual to leave his firm. The supervisor that I had talked to, and I told him it's absolutely up to you. He'd like to work in his firm, but this supervisor actually said that he is too good at doing what he does, that the firm needs to worry about their bottom line and they need to be profitable. That is very understandable, but that candidate had come to him saying, you're not signing off on my hours because all I'm doing is this. I need to get this experience. And they said, no, because we need you to do this to make money. So at that point, you need to look within yourself and figure out what is best for you and your career. And sometimes that might be to move on to a firm. One of the good things about having your AXP record, and especially when you filled out all those check boxes of all of those various categories, you can use that when you sit down with your supervisor to say, this is what I've done, this is what I need to do. When you have your reviews, you will have a record of all the stuff that you've learned and done. It can be beneficial in regards to your negotiations. And it's definitely something you need to take into account if you're not fulfilling the requirements of the program. So, should be talking to them about a lot of firms, another thing, there are certain larger firms will actually help pay for the program, they'll help pay for the exams. Some firms don't care whether you ever get licensed or not. These are the types of questions that you should be thinking about and asking as you're working your way through this early part of your career, because that difference of the couple $1,000s for these tests and resources could be a very big deal. And these are also the types of things that you can do when you're negotiating your salaries and when you're going to a firm. Do you guys help with it? Are there any raises once I become a licensed architect? Some firms pretty much just give you a pat on the back and you go back to work. That's what happened with me, just because that's just the way it is. But some firms actually do give nice bonuses once you've built the process. So it's a good thing to definitely talk about. So go back to those experience setting. If you're not through the process, even if you are working under a licensed architect, you can get more hours at the same time, like that evening, go on a site visit or do some of this extra work. Try to get those hours done as quickly as you can. So I'm going to just touch on this briefly. Let's see where we are. A half hour and a little bit of time left on here. Actually, I'm going to hold off on the ARE 40150 so that we can spend more time on that section. So the process of getting licensed in the state of Maryland, what you want to do is you have your NCARB record. You will go to the Maryland State Board of Architects. They actually have a document that you will download and fill out. You can also fill it out online. that is your application to take the ARE exam. So for people, whether you have the degree or not, if you do not have the accredited degree, you have to just fill out a little bit of extra information, which is an unexperienced form, so that a licensed architect can kind of fulfill the rest of your education experience. If you've done the professional degree, you'll have your university send in to them your a sealed transcript, fill out all this information. NCARB will verify that you have a record, and then they'll put together your file. And the lady at the state board, her name is Iris Beasley. She's absolutely wonderful to work with, and she will help guide you if you have any questions about putting your record together. Once your record and everything is there, I think I want to say it meets on the 4th Wednesday. So if everything's in by the previous Friday, then you'll be reviewed at that coming board meeting. So it's once a month that they meet. Once you get your approval from them, that gives you your authorization to test. That is sent. It'll essentially unlock the ability through NCARB for you to be able to start taking the exams and signing up through the Prometric. Now, once you've finished all of your exams, it then becomes kind of a waiting game. What's going to happen then is NCARB is going to be submitting that you have finished the rest of your exams back to Maryland. Maryland will contact you, where then you will fill out another form, pay a fee, and then they grant you, they will send you a congratulations, you are licensed, and then they give you a number. At that point, you are now licensed in the state of Maryland, and then you can go to various resources or various websites to get your little stamp and do all that fun stuff. From that point, take on all that wonderful liability. So that's the process. If you guys have any questions about the process of licensure here or in some of the other local jurisdictions, kind of after we're done tonight, I can talk to you guys about that, or feel free to contact me at any time. I deal, because I'm the licensed advisor in Maryland, I deal with a lot of people calling and finding out what the process is for Maryland, because Maryland is one of the states that allows alternative paths towards licensure. Delaware, on the other hand, without the NAB accredited degree, they won't even ever look at it. So it's very, very opposite here. A lot of people come from all over the country to get licensed in Maryland, Wisconsin, New York, Arizona, and there's a couple others that have that path. So now you are a licensed architect, and you get that fancy little thing that gives you lots and lots of liability if you so choose to stamp something and sign it. So NCARB certification. This is where this word mobility is extremely important, because it's a very difficult, not a difficult process, but it's a lengthy and expensive process to get reciprocity. When you have your NCARB certificate, all you have to do is go to NCARB's website, have them transmit your record to that state, and then that state will get it. You fill out a piece of paperwork for that state in most cases, and then in a very quick time period, you're licensed. DC, it took me less than a week once I submitted it. And most of that time it took for NCARB to actually submit the email with my record to them. It took DC almost instant to fulfill that. Some states take longer. I've heard that New Jersey can take up to a couple months. So if you get to the point where you need to get licensed, contact those jurisdictions and figure that out. But the NCARB certificate really is what's going to help you with that reciprocity. If you don't have an NCARB certificate, what you'll need to do is you're going to need to contact that jurisdiction, fill out all of their paperwork for an initial licensure. You're going to have your sealed transcript sent from your university. You're going to have letters of recommendation and all sorts of other things that you have to do, and go through that whole process and have the board then get your record from NCARB that you are licensed, and it's just a lot lengthier process. So if you do qualify for a certificate, it's a very good thing to have. Now there is a cost to it. It is a couple $100, between $200 and $300. I don't know the exact amount, but it's something that I just look at it as part of my life at this point. Every year you pay it, similar to how I feel about my NCARB dues. I'm getting a lot out of both of them. It's just worked into my budget every year. I kind of factor it monthly. So the benefit is, of course, that happy path. When you do have the requirements of that, you automatically get all 54 jurisdictions. If you don't, then you do have some other requirements that we can talk about another way. The alternative path can get an NCARB certificate. It just takes an extra few years. So the good thing about NCARB certified is you do also have there's reciprocity with other countries, and that is ever growing. Currently, there is a shared, an exchange licensure with Canada, Mexico, Australia, New Zealand, and there are some staff at NCARB who are continuously reaching out to other countries to lengthen that. A lot of it depends on the education requirements within those countries. Some countries have a lot more lax requirements, so NCARB wants to make sure that that other country has very similar standards to what we have here. So also, if you do not maintain your NCARB record period of time and you then want to get it at some point, you have to pay an $1,100 fee to just get it reinstated. So if you want that easy reciprocity somewhere, you're going to be forking out some extra money. So it is good to just let that, once you're through the process, keep going and maintain your record. Now, it does give you the ability to put NCARB after your name. Beneficial in the sense that people will be, they'll know that you are, that you kind of met the highest level of standards that NCARB has. And it's not really helpful other than that. It's somewhat similar to kind of having AIA after your name. All it means is that you are a licensed architect in a jurisdiction versus associate AIA, which just means that you're a member of the organization. But it is an easy way for people to see that you are indeed licensed in at least a jurisdiction. And you do get all the monographs that NCARB has for free when you have an NCARB certificate, which can get you a lot of your continuing education. If you want a hard copy of the books, it's $20 shipped. Some of them are very good, and they're always working on adding new monographs to that. And again, along with that, kind of the mentor and supervisor requirements, they are continually working on trying to find new benefits for certificate holders. And that is it for the AXP portion. If you guys have any questions about some of this?
I did have questions about the not being on the happy path. You want to wait till the end? Or...
Yeah, definitely, and make sure you have my information because I can help guide you through that after this evening as well.
Okay.
So now at this point, I think we'll take about a 5-minute break or so, and then we'll delve into the ARE. So this way, I have actually a little bit more time on the ARE. I'll delve a lot deeper into that.
So for anyone who didn't hear, the restrooms are straight down that hall over there. You get to the men's on the right first and across the lobby for the women. If you didn't sign in, please make sure that you do it.
Okay.
Different bands.
I went down once.
Oh, you did.
You're not happy. Actually, a lot of people don't like me using the term happy path.
That's okay.
Because
It looks happy to me. It would leave you.
if I had the ability to have gotten the degree in time, my degree, I have an interior design. I was always working with architects. I wanted to get the degree. By the time I finished, so and I did, and I just kept it.
Well, good. That's where you are. I took the opposite path. I had master's in architecture. I went down to I did my internship in architecture, but I went into interior design. I have it. And then I woke up one day and said, you gotta get life. What the heck? And I did it in California.
There's some programs.
For the only one.
Well, what it is for individuals who qualify. Don't have to. If you work for so long and you're now a principal, don't everybody sign on it, you're not working in that capacity,
Yeah.
there's a way for you to send it forward. And then you'll be doing directly with that. And I don't know the very.
I can find out.
We have a presentation at one of the seminars, so the big grouping all about it. But
There is
the
a
lady
path.
that was with me, one of the anchors, she focused on all that. I focused on alternative paths that I went down. She handled that stuff, and I kind of glazed over because it was a
Maybe
little
I should get her name.
Yeah, I can give you her information. I can give you her. Yeah, I don't know the exact what you provide, how you provide, so what you need to do with it. You'll need to show through your work. Once you do that, it's pretty good. done. They want people from our place.
Yeah. No, they used to do it.
What's your tiers then?
And I'm working for the next one. Yeah. I'm like, seriously?
You get out, you look everywhere.
I wish that you were very much together. Okay. So one of the professors, one of the interior professors that I studied under, he was probably the most significant architect out there. Not to architecture. He believes that the best architect is all about individual sort of content.
No.
And I even broke the program rules by taking some extra time than I'm supposed to in the program. But I'm like, I'm paying a lot of money to be here. I'm only physically in a figure. I have a full studio, including my theater. And he taught me how to do that. And I always worked for architects, and I figured, oh, I'm asked to have to work.
Horribly.
There's programs that are geared towards people who are licensed. There are programs of people who have been working for a while, evening programs that can be done, which are Boston Architectural College for the program, like a distance program. That one, you go 1 week a semester. You go for 8 days and 10 work, and then you do everything remotely. Yeah. And it's expensive. About a $60,000 program to get done. Again, at this point, all it would give me is a few jurisdictions that will not recognize me at this point. I'm not working in the city. I will not, and I am not. They're one of them. I mean, the only one that was my CD is Delaware. It's called Delaware. Yeah, partner with somebody who figured out. All right, you can pull that out. All right, you're not in, or if you don't do any, we could do cards. Yeah, we could do. At this point, I've got a lot of. Yeah, it's really more. The NCARB certification is really more about. That's really the sale. That's expensive. It's $400 for the training. That's $400 you could get if you have a job pending in the state. I have one pending in Pennsylvania, and it's a really big job. With about $400. All right, now we're going to get into the meat of this. This is the heavy hitter here. The new exam, the old exam. I do talk a lot about the ARE 4.0 in regards to how it relates to the ARE 5.0. In case you guys know, maybe not know, the ARE 4.0 goes dark, I think, June 30th of this year. So if you are still on the path to take any ARE 4.0 exams, you have another month and a half or so, a little over a month and a half to take those, and then be done with it. And I'll go into some of that. Is there anybody in here that's still taking any 4.0 exams? There's not. But there might be some people who are going to be watching this, and I won't talk about it too much because even if people are watching it, they only have about a month left anyways. So again, my contact information, hopefully you've already taken it down. Here we go. So I'm going to preface this with two very, very big points. Your mileage may vary. What I'm going to talk about in these exams, my process, things that I feel are important, things that I feel are not important, may not work for you. Everybody has their own way of doing it. Everybody has their own order of taking the exams. Everybody has their own way of studying. I have a way that works for me, and I have resources that I recommend, ones that I don't recommend as much. You may not agree with it. So your mileage may vary. Everybody has a different path. I'm just giving you one path, so hopefully if you're afraid to start the exams, this helps you get over that fear. If you're wondering what you should take next or how to maybe approach it, this will hopefully give you guys some ideas of how to do that. So this next one is the most important thing that we are going to be talking about today. Get this into your minds. Have it always in your mind at all times. Do not divulge exam content, ever. After you get out of an exam, don't go to a forum and post what your questions were. Don't talk to your friends about it. Don't even go back into your office. Talk to some of your coworkers about what you had on your exam. These questions, and there are about 11,000 or so questions on the exam total in all 6 sections, they cost a lot of money for them to replace. There's a team of people that are required to go through a very long process to vet questions and work and develop them and make them to where they will be adequate to test your minimum capacity to practice architecture. A handful of years ago, there was an architecture forum, the ARE forum, that was closed down because some people divulged information. Those candidates were suspended from taking them. I don't know if they were barred from ever taking them. It cost a couple $2 million for NCARB to replace the content that was divulged. You can say, you know what, this resource helps me. I use this resource, and I really felt that using this in my studying, and this is how I studied, that's fine. You know, there was a lot of, you can, I don't even know if I want to even get into saying anything, because don't divulge content. They're watching now, they might even be bugged. They are on the lookout for this. It is a very, very, very big deal. Don't do it. The forums everywhere, it's really wonderful places to get information. Use all these resources, just use them appropriately, and then you will not have any problems, because it can really derail your career. So, talked about this education, experience, and examination. Now, for some reason, this program is not showing headlines. I don't know how to do this. Not reading appropriately. See if I can. Have this in another file. Got to have some sort of a hiccup when you're doing these things. This is not my computer, so I'm a Mac guy, so I don't even know where to look. Where is my? There we go. Nope, that's not it. Oh, here's my.
Yeah, we just.
Yeah, the other part is not reading appropriately.
Ah, gotcha.
Just open the ARE.
This one?
There we go. I wonder why I didn't have that little disclaimer one up above there. For some reason, it wasn't shown. Again, your mileage may vary. Here, this is a chance for me to also show you the second disclaimer again, because it is that important. Do not divulge exam content ever. Very, very bad. So back again to the threes: education, experience. At this point, you're probably working through your experience portion. You finished your education, or you're doing more experience. So that this is all about the examination part of it. So the ARE 5.0, I'm going to just give you a couple of the policies for testing. Prometric test centers are where, if you haven't taken any exams, when you sign up for them, there's centers pretty much all over the country. There's some even in other countries. If you're in, I think there might be one like Hong Kong, and there's some in the Middle East. There are places that take tests all over the place. So when you have your authorization to test, go through the NCARB website, and you'll be able to sign up for the test, and they'll give you the availability of when you can sign up for them. I personally like taking tests very early on Monday morning. I always took Monday off, so I would at the end of the day, Friday, I just told my wife, you're not going to see me until Monday afternoon, and I would start studying Friday, Saturday, Sunday, a little bit. I would end midday, and I would just relax the rest of that night. That was when I would see my family again for a little bit. I'd get a good night's rest, and then I would get up Monday morning and take the test. That's how it worked for me. Some people like taking them at the end of the week, everything. I kind of feel you have a way to do that kind of last big push before you take the test. So you have to kind of go through the website to find out when the tests are available and at what times. Plan ahead for that. Cost of the ARE 4.0, because it was 7 divisions, was $1,470. The new ARE 5.0, since there's only 6 divisions, is actually less. So the individual sections is $210 per section. If you fail it, you pay $210 again. Now, there is a rolling clock of when you passed your first exam, you have 5 years from that date to pass all of the rest of the exams. If you do not meet that window, the first exam that you passed drops off, and then your 5-year rolling clock goes to the date of your next passed exam. And it will always remain a 5-year rolling window. So always keep that in the back of your mind, and it's on all of your score reports. It'll give you your information for that. Retesting. If you do happen to fail an exam, it used to be a 6-month wait before you take it again, which was terrible, especially when you only had one left, and then you had to wait for that. Now they only make you wait 60 days, which is fantastic, but it can also be more costly if you don't pass them. That's kind of up to you. You can take a division up to 3 times per year, and that's pretty straightforward. Rescheduling. It's good to schedule these in advance. It also forces you to do it. If you just say, oh, I'll schedule it when I'm ready for it, you're never going to do it. Schedule the exam month out, 2 months out, 3 months out, whatever it is, whatever you feel you can do, schedule out. If you start getting within that window where you're a few weeks back or 4 or 5 weeks back, it's free. You know, life's coming up, push the exam out further. You won't lose your money. When you get within that certain window, it's $60, goes up to $80. If you're only a few days before your test, you will lose your $210. If you're here, if you're within this window and you feel you absolutely can't and you're willing to lose the $80, lose the $80, reschedule. If you're within these 3 days prior to it, I would suggest you just take the test. It's not going to hurt you. It's going to get you some experience. Who knows? You might end up passing it. I've talked to a handful of people who were that certain that they were going to fail it, but they were within that window. They took it, they passed, and on to the next one. Just because you will lose your $210, whether you take it and fail or you don't take it at all, you're still going to lose that money. So and these are all within the ARE guidelines. So every time you take a test, you're going to be getting one of these nice little pages. Hopefully yours has those nice big letters on the top, PASS. And what it'll have is it'll have your list of all of your sections. It's going to have the date that you tested, you passed, and then it's going to have your expiration date. That's the key for you to see where your 5-year rolling window is. Always keep in mind that and look at that every time you get one of these score reports so you're cognizant of that 5-year window. Now, if you see the dreaded FAIL, then you're going to have some more information on it. If you get the pass, then you pass all the sections. Get the fail, you're going to see something like this. You're going to see the various content areas. So this is from the old exam. You don't have that anymore. But every exam has specific content areas. And the guide, it'll tell you how much percentage is in it. It's in the ARE guide. It tells you kind of the breakdown of the types of questions they're going to ask. This will tell you whether you passed it, whether you failed it just a little bit, or whether you failed it a lot. I unfortunately failed one of my exams, and I thought it was the only exam I left thinking I aced it. I did better on this exam than any of the other ones that I took. Yeah, not only did I fail it, but the only one that I had passing was the vignette, and the whole rest of it was all grayed down level 3. It was ridiculous. So I just hunkered down and took a couple others in the meantime and got back to it. But it at least told me that I was way off in my study method for that, and I'll get into a little bit of how and why that happened to me, I believe, and what I did to change my method of studying for that. So these are good ways for you to kind of find out what you did well, what you didn't do so well, and help gear your studying for if you have to retake it. Don't sweat the retakes. I've talked to people who failed 7, 8 sections. One person failed 5 sections in a row. Now, an architect, a lot of people fail them. It's a little less stressful, I think, now than when it was when you took all 4 sections in a row and had to wait a full year to take a section again. Worst case scenario, you're out $210 and you got to wait 2 months. Not a big deal. These are very, very long careers. Don't sweat the failed exam section. Just push on, move on to the next one. Try not to worry about it too much and learn from it, and you will eventually get there. So what is this monster? The 4.0 exam, and again, I'm going to touch on the 4.0 exams because it's very important to understand the 5.0 exams. The 4.0 exams were broken down into 7 separate sections that had multiple choice and vignettes, and I'll talk to how they changed the exams, but it was subject-based. So you had a section that was purely about schematic design. You had a section that was purely on structural systems, building systems, materials, and methods. The schematic design was purely vignettes. There was no multiple choice. It was a very simple system that was introduced in 3.0, 3.1, and continued in 4.0, just repackaged a little bit differently. All the same content through those. It was really easy to transition through those. This is a major, major paradigm shift. There's some information about the timelines of how many questions there are and all that. That information is here, and it's good to look over so you can see what the old exam was versus the new exam. It's good to use old material to help frame some of the new stuff. So the new exam, broken up completely differently. All that same stuff is still here. Instead of having 7 exams that are subject-based, you have 6 exams that are now based upon the various periods and phases within the life cycle of a firm and a project. There's an estimated about 11,000 questions on ARE 4.0. There's about 11,000 questions on ARE 5.0, the pool of questions that you get from it. Questions really haven't changed. There may be some new questions in there, but it is the same content. Structures hasn't changed in the last year. Steel has not changed. All the content is the same. It's just packaged differently. Where you had structures on one exam, you're now going to see structures over the course of 3 exams. There's going to be different aspects of the structure, and there's going to be a different way of how you study for that. So these separate exams, practice management, project management, programming and analysis, project planning and design, project development and documentation, and construction and evaluation. All in the neighborhood of 3.5 to 5 hours, very similar to the old exams. This gives you exactly how many questions there are on this. The guide is going to give you a little bit more information on kind of how those questions break down into what percentages of different topics of the content areas are going to be touched on in each of these exams. Follows your AXP program. So the breakdown of those 96 content areas does help frame some of what is going to be covered on this. The guide goes into exactly what these cover as well. So you'll want to go through, start reading about all of these, and then there's the question of, well, there's 6 different sections. What do I take and in what order? So in ARE 4.0, I had a very specific way that I felt people should take these exams. I felt schematic design was best to take because it taught you the vignettes first. Then you delve into a 3 grouping of kind of that work together the best in regards to pre-design and construction documents, the stuff that that are not based on specific systems. Then you have that are not technical exams. They're practical exams. These technical exams then are all standalone. I figured once you got through these, which you actually study these together, I felt that you need to study for them all at the same time. 60, 30, 10. And then once you finished one, then you do like 70, 30 or 80, 20, and then 100% of the last one. You're able to kind of cut through them. It's irrelevant anymore, but in the ARE 5.0, there's still a grouping that works together like this. So in the old way, once you're done with that, then you can delve into any of these 3 in any order. I felt that structural systems and building systems next. Easy way that you're delving into the tough ones, do one or the other. And then you finish with BDCS, which is materials and methods, that I believed had a little bit of everything on it. It also had the most vignettes, and it was a more challenging exam, in my opinion, so I felt save that for last. A lot of people flipped it and did it completely in reverse to get all the hard ones out of the way and end easy. Put the schematic one kind of in the middle to help them through it. Everybody has a way. That's how I felt 4.0 worked for me and how I've talked to people through it. So in the transition, there was a way to do all of these exams in 5 exams. Now, the key to doing that is that you needed to do construction documents and services no matter what. That covered in a transition that I have a little chart on here that helps in regards to breaking down study materials. I wanted people to take that first just to make sure you had it. and then do those other two as part of it, and then continue it on as is. So what I believe in the ARE 5.0 order is I still believe that you should be doing a grouping of the non-technical exams first. In the life cycle of this, if you kind of looked at it in the order of the test of 1 to 6, I believe that you start with 1, 2, and actually jump to 6 before then you get to 3, 4, and 5. 6 is actually the construction document exam. I think it fits more in line with those 3 exams that were done in the ARE 4.0. That content breaks down more similar in these 3. So the first one is practice management. You're touching on, so all of this is also framed into some of the other previous exams study content. As Renee had mentioned, they don't have ARE 5.0 study materials yet, but they have ARE 4.0 study materials. You're going to find ARE 4.0 study materials everywhere, and it's going to be infinitely cheaper than new materials. You can find ARE 3.1 materials as well. Well, again, structures in ARE 3.1 is no different than 4.0 and is no different than 5.0. If you can get the old book for $5 where the new book is $85, buy the $5 book and just find out where that material translates to the new one, and you've saved yourself. You've almost got a third of an exam or half an exam paid for that way. So practice management is going to be dealing heavily with kind of business operations, project delivery, some of the contracts. And I won't get too much into the very specifics of the exams just because you're going to be getting it from all of the resources from the guides, but I'm just going to show you the breadth of the materials that you can use to help you study after I talk about kind of this exam order. So after practice management, the next exam that I feel is best to take is project management. Those two kind of go hand in hand. They're kind of the earlier there, more of the business side and the non-technical side of the profession. This, you're still dealing with some of the contracts. These are kind of the ones that are dealing with pre-design, with site planning and design, the elements of the CDS exam, elements of the programming, planning, and practice exam is broken up into these two. This is just how a project is run, how teams are run, how projects how the cost analysis works, how you work with various consultants, who's responsible for what as part of the team. A lot of that information is to be found on the project management exam. So then I feel that as part of that grouping, you want to go into the construction and evaluation exam, because that's going to be part, again, a lot of that CDS material that you've already been studying for, construction documents, and kind of how practice works is going to be within here. Here, you're going to be delving much deeper into the 2 big contracts that you'll find, the general conditions and the owner-contractor contract. There's a resource later that I'll talk about that will solidify that into your mind. So this is from bidding through construction administration. Those 3 are the non-technical that work well together, and I think they should be taken together because they build upon each other. After that, you go into what I feel are the 3 technical exams where you get your kind of schematic design, design development, and construction documentation in the sense where you're starting to deal with the systems. So these exams are going to have this. You're going to be tying in some of the programming and planning and site planning. You're going to be dealing with a lot of the building codes, ADA regulations, but you're going to be dealing with this not as how a practice is run, but how you're going to actually realize the project. You're going to start thinking about some of the structural systems, maybe some of the building systems on a bigger code requirement aspect. So this one kind of delves you into the technical, and then these last 2, project planning and design, where you start really selecting your systems and materials. You're not delving into the very specifics of the structural. You'll be more having probably questions about which structural system would you use in this situation. You're not going to be asked questions on the very specific calculations of what happens when a load is going on to a beam at this point. That's going to be on the next one. But this one, the next one, usually should be taken together because of the difficulty of studying for some of these content areas on its own. How do you study for structures by itself? How do you do just the analysis side of the structural systems versus the actual calculation? A lot of the seminars, and I'll touch on one of the seminars, doesn't break it up. You take that seminar, you're going to do all of structures, and then you're just going to take whichever exam is going to have that content on. So these 2 exams are going to be kind of going together, take them in any order. And again, if you feel that you want to just touch all these first, do these first. I would really just suggest that you at least do them in the 2 groups of 3 together. I think that that's the most logical method to get through these. And again, your mileage may vary. You might feel more comfortable in one area, want to jump to another, jump around, do whatever you want, whatever gets you through it. So this is that order that I recommend. And there's other people online who have varying different opinions. This is just mine, and it goes back to how I've worked with a lot of people over the years on ARE 4.0. So again, ARE 4.0 retires on June 30th. Transitioning whenever, this doesn't really affect any of you guys. What this information is good for, though, in this kind of transition management, and mainly this credit model, that whole idea of that you can get through the whole exam process with just 5 exams, was that if you took the CDS exam, the PPP exam, you've already covered a large portion of them. So all you have to do, if you take site planning and design, then you only need to take project planning and design or project development and documentation. Now, you can also do it where you do just CDS and PPP, and you take programming and analysis, project planning and design, and project development and documentation. There are 2 ways for you to do a 5-exam scenario. Why this is important for even people just starting out on 5.0 is because this gives you a very definitive breakdown of where you're going to find material, old resources being used on the new exam. If you're going to be taking the practice management exam, well, you know that you can use programming, planning, and practice and construction document and services resources. All the questions on those 2 exams that relate to it are going to be found on there. Now, the CDS, the reason that I recommended people take that first before the transition is because you can see there's 4 exams that cover that material. If you failed to finish 4.0 before 5.0 started and you had all these done and all you had left was CDS, so you took 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, you still have to take 7, 8, 9, 10. So you still have to take 4 exams. So really it was important to take CDS first. But this credit model is just really helpful to break down the content that was found on the exams. Structural systems and building systems, again, is only found on those 2 exams. Building design and construction, actually all 3 of the technical ones are really found on only those 2 exams. But schematic design kind of rolls into there on that. It's a useful tool on the disk here. I think it's still on NCARB's website. It probably will be for a while, at least until the 30th. I'd hope that they'd keep it around for a little while longer for the study materials. So here's where the one option was and the second option of how you could get through it within 5. So, all right. So the resources. There's kind of 2 different paths. You have, or 2 different types of resources you need. You have general study materials and then exam-specific materials. General study materials are a lot of times the stuff that you will use in your profession, that you want to use on all the exams. Exam-specific are something you don't need to have, but sometimes it's good to get them. On the disk that I'll be giving you is kind of all free resources that I've found online over the years. That includes all of the current NCARB guides, which has a practice exam on there, like a practice quiz. The 4.0 has practice quizzes, which is really, really good because, again, a lot of those same questions. And I even have the old 3.1 guide, which has quizzes. The more quizzes you can take, the better. The more you're testing yourself on this, the better. And I'm providing you some really good ones that were provided directly by NCARB. I'm not going to discuss specific diagrams, but you very well might find a diagram that's in one of those guides on your exam. It might be asking for a different section of that diagram, but use that diagram that you see in these various guides as a resource to look at other diagrams of that content type that might be similar. You kind of see what they're looking for. So those resources are very, very good. Vignette files are useless anymore. They're still on there just because some people are still taking those 4.0 exams for a little while longer. Compiled notes. There are a lot of people who have done work that I was way too lazy to do. They actually condensed all the material down to the key information needed. You do not want to use any of those resources to just study for your exam. You want to use those resources after you've gotten a broader picture of the content. Use that as that last morning, the last weekend, to just refresh all the information. So I'll go into some more information about them. I'm going to move forward just so we can get through. I've only got about 25 minutes to delve into this. So what you guys should do, I hope there's a sign-up sheet for everybody that is here right now. One of the best things is that you now, if you don't have a study group with people that you're working on these exams with, you now have a whole bunch of people around this room. You should be able to bounce ideas off of them. You should be able to hopefully form a study group out of this. These are other people who are all going through the same stuff that you are. You might have somebody who's taken an exam that you are at the same time, or somebody who just took the exam that you're going to. Hopefully get the contact information of everybody here and reach out, use each other. I didn't have anybody for this when I went through it, and I was really alone, and I think it made it a lot harder for me. So before we get into some of the resources, this new 5.0 exam, you know that there are no longer vignettes. Going even further back, the original exam was by hand in a room for 4 days. You took section after section, and on the last day, on Sunday, 12 hours building. You designed a building, beginning to end. Then they broke it up into what are called vignettes. They had it in multiple choice tests, and then they had various specific vignette tests, which broke down that 12-hour exam into multiple different sections of the building. So when you did all the vignettes, you essentially designed a building. Then in 4.0, what they did was they condensed it more and went from 9 exams, and they just brought all the vignettes and just placed them into the multiple choice. So you would have a multiple choice portion and a vignette part of it for an exam, whereas one of the exams was just vignettes. The reason this is important is they've gotten rid of the vignettes. Well, they still want you to be able to essentially design a building. What they have now are graphical questions found throughout the exams. NCARB has you can go through the website and you can find a practice test, which is going to give you some work on the case studies, and it's going to give you a chance to answer some of these to get you a feel of how you click and move. So where you used to have to say design a section cut through a building and put all the components based upon a program in there, now they're going to ask you specific questions about a building section, and you need to really do all of that. It's just now broken up into questions throughout the exam. Hotspot questions where you'll have to click on something. So say they'll ask you, is it A, B, C, or D? Click on the area and it'll have to select that. There's drag and place. Instead of you having to draw a section or really lay out certain components in one of the vignettes, now you just have to kind of take all the pieces, put them in the correct order, and now you're essentially doing a wall section. There's these drag and place questions. This is the biggie of the new type of exam, case studies. Every exam has at least one, possibly two, anywhere from I think 10, 15, 20, or 30 questions. It varies. It depends on what the case study is. What they do is they give you a scenario. They'll give you all the resources that you need to be able to answer the question, and then they start asking questions about this. It's a paradigm shift. It's very something difficult for some people, but what's great about this is that this is more how architects practice. This is more in line what you're actually going to do on a day-to-day basis. Giving information, a program, or what they give you, and you have to use your resources to solve the problems and answer a bunch of consecutive questions related to that. In regards to taking the test, there's various. Do you want to do the case studies first? Do you wait till the end? That's going to be a personal preference to see how you feel. I would suggest go into the case studies, review them, see what it is, possibly do those first, allotting yourself time, maybe to go back. This is going to have to be, and this is what some people who may have taken the exams, you'll want to use your resources and go to the forums and talk to people who've taken the 5.0 exams. I did not take 5.0 exams. I've only taken the practice versions of this, and I've talked to the people who developed the exams to know some about it. There's others that will be able to give you the exact information on it. So again, handbook, ARE community, they have a video series. NCARB themselves has done a really good job of providing resources to help you through this test. So we've already talked about a lot of that. One of the things is that the reference guide does give you a matrix of which resources out there are useful for each of the exams. I have it more condensed than this. Some of these exams actually will tell you like a 40 resource list of stuff. You're not going to use all 40 of them. There's just no way. Some of them are way more important than others. I'll show you the ones that I feel are the most important. So here are the general resources that you should have. Everybody should have this book. I think it's one of the most important books in this profession. There is a student version of this that will help you with all of the exams. I would say that if you can, swing the couple $100 and get this. If your firm has it, great, use it. This thing I still use all the time. It is just an absolutely wonderful resource for the exam and the profession as a whole. It will help you with aspects at least of the first three, the non-technical ones. A lot of information is going to be in here. And this is the next one, Architectural Graphic Standards. It's kind of the sister to the previous one, made by the same company. Everybody's probably used this, has it in their office. Doesn't matter really what version it is, as long as it's one of the last couple versions. It's another very useful resource. You won't use it on everything, but it's going to be a good source. If you're not understanding something, hit this, and it's going to help you out. These next two from school, Ching. Two different versions of it. You've got Building Construction Illustrated and Building Codes Illustrated. Those 4 books I have on a shelf pretty close to my desk, and whenever I'm not sure about something, I go to them. But when I was going through the exam process, I was using these 4 quite a bit on all of the exams to help me when I needed to kind of clarify some information. ANSI. This is another one that's just very good to have. Again, your firms probably have a copy of this. This is going to give you all the ADA accessibility information to help work with your study. IBC, don't need to delve pretty deep into this, but this is just another one of those resources that you just have to have. I have a resource library, thankfully, that goes back about 30 plus years of all of these resources. You really only need to use IBC 2015 codes for the exams themselves. And FPA 101, and it's going to be a little bit overkill for the exams, but it's just another resource that's really good for practice. There's information in here that's not going to be covered in the code books, and they go together. Most jurisdictions will require you to meet minimum IBC and NFPA and ANSI. So the guides, again on here, I have provided all of the 4.0 guides for each of the exams, the 3.1 guide, and the 5.0 guide. What you'll want to do is you're going to want to get these and do those quizzes in this and revisit those quizzes periodically, because there is no source out there that's going to give you purely what NCARB is going to ask like they do on their own exam, and it's going to have all the information that's going to be on it. It is the absolute first resource that you should use for everything. Again, start with 5.0 and then go backwards and use those other 2 with it. Here's the 3.0. 4.0 and 5.0. 5.0 is just one guide. 4.0 is individual guides for each of the subject areas. 3.1 is one guide for all the subject areas as well. But they're pretty easy to find on here. This is actually getting harder to find online, but it is there. But thankfully, I've got it here for you. The community. Again, you can go onto there. The 4.0 community was more about the vignettes. The 5.0 community is going to help you with some of these items, and have some of that still in there. There's another website that I'm a very, very big fan of outside of the NCARB site, and that is the ARE Coach Forum. This is the successor to the original ARE forum. They rule this with an iron fist, so do not divulge any content. They're the people who survived the old forum better than the new forum. What's wonderful about this forum is they have a marketplace. So people who have done all the exams all over the country, they're selling all their resources. Go there, go to that marketplace, and you're going to be able to find a lot of stuff for way cheaper than brand new. And you can use any old resources for these exams. Other than sometimes there is. Some people will actually give you. I gave all my binders. A girl that I knew, she bought a few of my resources. And I just gave her my binders of all the stuff that I had. Everybody's trying to help each other out. It's a really good community. This one's not relevant to you guys. Door Solutions. This was one of the Bibles for the vignette. Arca flashcards. This is both in physical cards and on an app. The app for your iPhone is $150. Probably the most expensive iPhone app, or one of them that you can find. It is amazing. These cards are amazing. If you get these cards, you can go back to 3.0 cards. They're going to work just as fine. Just break down the information based on the new exam. These cards, even in the 3.1 version of pre-design, was PPP and SPD, which is now those first couple exams. Same questions. These are really good to use just throughout your studying for the whole process. If you have the iPhone app for this and you're willing to spend that money, anytime you're sitting around, you're waiting for your coffee at Starbucks, whatever you're doing, flip that open to the section you're taking and roll through some flashcards, and it's going to ingrain some of this information into your mind. Very, very wonderful resource. There are other apps out there. Study Blue is one of them. There's even a lot of newer ones. There's a lot of people who put together flashcards. So if you don't want to spend all that money from Arca Flash, there's people out there who've actually created a lot of really wonderful flashcards. So you can seek out some of those resources. And again, on this Jenny, PDX, and Caroline probably wrote the most wonderful condensed study notes for all of the 4.0 exams, and they're just as relevant for the 5.0 exams. It's just wonderful, wonderful, wonderful people who took the time to create these absolutely fantastic guides. Use those after you've already done a broad study. So now we get into the kind of the big companies. Brightwood, which was Kaplan, or Ballast. Which one do you choose? I actually think you should use a little bit of both of them. Kaplan is great for going into the specifics of each of the exams. They have really, really good Q&A guides. They have really good multiple choice sections of all their books. I like their books because they break down into chapters with a review at the end and a quiz. The more quiz questions you can do, the better. Ballast's ARE manual is extremely important to get the overall breadth of all of the exams. It's going to cover the content across the board. Now, what's nice is you don't need to have ARE 5.0. You can use the ARE 4.0 book as well. On here, there's actually I don't think I have a slide for it, but there's a document in here that actually lists all the chapters of both of the books, and it tells you which chapters of 4.0 to study for the 5.0 exam. So you can save a lot of money doing that. This is going to give you the more broader information. Kaplan's going to give you a lot of broad information as well, but maybe find if you can delve a little bit deeper in a different way. I like to go back and forth between them. Now, history questions, I wouldn't really worry about it that much. Some of the resources there show there's actually Kaplan makes a history book. It's not necessary. You're going to get a few questions sporadically. There's probably less questions on the 5.0 exam regarding history because how it's been combined now. They have less opportunity on some of the exams to ask structures questions. So where you used to have a big structures exam, now you have less questions because it's now mixed with building systems and materials. So it's getting less important, but you might want to use some of the resources out there, kind of refresh some of the main architects, some of their main buildings, some of the main time periods. Just keep a little bit of that refreshed if you have some of your old textbooks. It won't hurt. Some of the ARC Flash questions will actually have some history built into there to just get it fresh in your mind. So you might get one of those questions and it might be something that you just so happen to study, and it gives you that one more question towards passing. So specific resources for the exams. MEEB is a book for building systems. It's about a 1,000-page monstrous tome that you'll never read all of it. This is a fantastic resource for diagrams and learning the details of the information you're going to get from the broader sources. This is going to be another source that you can go to really dial in some of that detailed information. It's not necessary to pass the sections that have building systems, but it's a good resource to have if you can find it or if you know somebody who has it. 9th edition or newer. On here is an actual chart that tells you which chapters are related to which content areas and where you find it in 9th, 10th, and 11th. So on chapters 4. So it doesn't matter which version you can get. You can get a real old one. And mechanical systems haven't changed too much other than some sustainable systems. So here's kind of an example of how they do it, and somebody took the effort to actually show what sections you should read heavily and what you shouldn't do. Fundamentals of building construction is going to be good for materials and methods, a lot better for learning some information about the site. I found it useful. I happened to find a copy of it, and I was able to use this to shore up my knowledge of the various materials, wood, steel, properties of different materials. I needed a big refresher on structures. These are just two really good books. If you're struggling with kind of wrapping yourself around structures, it's been many, many years. You may be familiar with these two. These two books are just really good refreshers to get your mind back into a structural framework. So specific, there are some seminars. Have any of you ever heard of David Stadis? He's a professor at University of North Carolina at Charlotte. He's a structures professor there. He's been traveling around the country for many years teaching a structures seminar. He also has it available for purchase online, which is a recording of him. It's a 3-day seminar, and it was one of the greatest things that I've ever done. I wouldn't have passed the structures exams without his knowledge. He didn't break it up for the new exams. So the reason that learning about 4.0 content for the 5.0 exams is good is because people like him still just teaches structures. learn structures, and then you'll be ready for that part of those two exams. He kind of starts at the beginning as if you know nothing about structures, and by the end of it, you have a deep working knowledge and a resource to kind of go back to. I would recommend him, even if you don't need to know anything about structures, just take it, because I still use some of his knowledge just in practice. And you can find it online. It's pretty easy to find. There's some competitors out there. Mitalski's, I looked over the structures seminar of his. I felt that it was a little bit more from an engineering standpoint. It was less accessible. That's my opinion. Some people find it's nice. It's a lot longer than Thaddeus's, and it's not as clean and clear. Very, very, very long course. Another book, a guide that's free out there just to give you a sense of lateral forces. This can help you just kind of reinforce your lateral force knowledge, which is a very big component of the structures exam. There's general forces and lateral. Lateral, you're going to get a lot of questions on it. Some people have had like very few, but most people, from my memory, there are a lot of lateral questions. No laterals. I'm not giving any content specific. No lateral and general. No, a lot of lateral. This helps with that. Marty's notes. This is actually a guy who took many years ago, in 2006, he took David Thaddeus' seminar. Took absolutely amazing notes. This will really help you if you do Thaddeus' seminar, but it's also helpful. It's free, found it online, it's on this disc. You can go through there and it'll help refresh a lot of structural concepts. It's a good resource to study after you've done a broader based study. Another guy is Michael Ehrman. He does a building systems. You can actually get this Amber book, which is just a series of 100 questions that build upon each other, that by the end of it, you've kind of got a good fundamental knowledge of building systems. He does bigger seminars. He's expanded over the last handful of years to offer a lot more resources. I've only done this Amber book, but if his other resources are anything like that little book, it'd be fantastic. Everybody I know who's done anything with this guy, any seminars, has really been thanked for it. Great resource to use. He does have video seminars for some of the 5.0 sections. And now that other Mitalski company, the same company, they have a building systems seminar. I would recommend it at all. It was this guy here, Michael Ehrman, is going to prepare you for building systems way better, I think, than this one. I'm not a huge fan. Black Spectacles came out after I finished the exams. When I first started hearing about it, it wasn't as good as it is today. Some people don't do well by learning from videos. They've gotten way better from my understanding, and now one of the people who was actually brought to the table with NCARB to actually develop their study materials was Black Spectacles. So they do have knowledge straight from the source, and they are very good. If you learn very well from videos, they are a very good resource. I want to include them now in anything because of the fact that this is becoming one of the major players in people's arsenal of the exams. Schiff Hardin lectures. Is anybody familiar with these guys? All right. This is a law firm in Chicago that had a guy teach a course on the legal side of the profession. And he had a series of 4 lectures. 2 lectures focused on the B101 and 2 lectures focused on the A201. They're on here, but you can find them online as well. Print out a copy of each of these 2 exams, listen to those 4 lectures, and you will be way further along than you were beforehand to pass anything related to those 2 contracts. You need to know these inside and out. Practicing down the road, 2 of the most important contracts you're ever going to learn. This is where you start with it. There will be questions in some form or another, in some way, shape, or form regarding these 2 contracts. Without divulging anything, they're very important. Who's responsible for what? Who? Very important. And from a legal standpoint, these will be answered by them. And it is more important in 5.0 because there's some more front-end stuff that focuses more on this in 5.0 that I believe was focused on in 4.0. So this has all that information. I've been talking about it all along. So the process that I feel worked best for me for all the exams, except for the one that I took for CDS, is start broad. Start with the Kaplan, start with the ballast, start with the bigger picture of the concept. So once you know kind of the overarching material found on the exam, then you start working your way in. I feel that that's appropriate for anything except for the information related to the specific contracts. So the construction document exam is the one exam that I feel is more laser focused. not as bigger picture, because the content is going to be more, you need to know much more specific information. Some of the exams are going to focus on which system are you going to use for this. That exam is going to say, this is a scenario that happened. Somebody is responsible. Who is it? And that's going to be something you find in a very specific detail in a contract. So that one, kind of that part of the construction document exam is much more laser focused than the other exam. So what I believe is the process, read the guide, start with the NCARB guides, take their practice test. Take the ARE 5.0 practice exam to learn the overall process of how they ask questions, to learn those other question types, learn about the case studies. So then start studying broadly, read the manual chapters, depending on whatever guides you're using, focus on, then start going down into that information, take quizzes as much as you can, and then supplement those chapters with the bigger resources that you have that gets you some more fine-tuned details within that content. Take that NCARB quiz again. After you've been studying for a good while, go back to it, because you're going to find more information, things are going to make more sense. Take that NCARB 3.1 quiz, you're going to get some information. Don't worry about those vignettes. But then when you start feeling pretty good, take some of those, if you have some of the QA guides or the end of book exams, then after you've got a lot of information, and start taking those bigger, longer exams so you can start feeling what it's like to answer large quantities of questions in one sitting. Review those, go back to the stuff that you're not doing well in, and rinse and repeat, and you'll be there. So after you've done some of that for a while, that's when I think you start getting into some of those condensed study notes. It's not really useful as just random bits of information without knowing that bigger context and having some grounding in some of how they're testing it. Take some of those exams. Now, in regards to doing brain dumps for exams, I've heard differing opinions on some places don't let you do anything written down. What it is you're not allowed to do anything before your exam starts. You used to be able to kind of have that 15-minute where you're going through the rules and regulations of taking the test. You could finish all that, and then you have a little window counting down where you could do a big brain dump. They don't allow that. That's considered cheating because you're going outside of the testing guidelines. What I do believe, and you might want to look into it, that once your exam starts, you have scratch paper. You can write stuff down on your scratch paper. Certain things like the structures portions of things, it might be worth it for you after your exam starts to jot down some major things that you don't want to have to reference while you're taking the exams. And there is kind of a structural cheat sheet that David Thaddeus' class taught you that gave you two charts of general and lateral structures. I spent every day I would wake up, I would copy that chart. Before I went to bed, I copied that chart on another piece of paper, and I did it every day that I studied for the structures exam. By the time I got into that room, I didn't even have to do a brain dump because I could actually visualize that piece of paper in my mind, and it was all there, and it's pretty much all the major formulas for structure. So at least working on the concept of a brain dump is very helpful for you to solidify some major concepts, a lot of the formulas that you'd find on building systems and structural systems. So last couple days, again, I took the exams on Monday. I would start on Friday, and that would really be just to do some review of condensed, work on the brain dump. Forget about the vignettes on there, but it's really just a time for you to just fine-tune the knowledge you already have. Get a good night's rest the night before. If you haven't taken any exams, they're very, very stressful. Make sure you're well rested. You're going to learn nothing in that night before the exam. Get a good night's rest in the morning before your exam or before you take it. Review a few notes or a few things just to kind of get yourself into the frame of mind before you can start the test. I tried to get there about a half hour before I was required to be in there at earliest. You don't want to deal with traffic. Get to your testing site as early as you can. Sit in the parking lot, go get a coffee beforehand, and just relax, look over a couple notes, and then go in and take your test. So, practice tests, retake them. The more questions you can answer, the better you're going to be prepared for these things. This is kind of, and also I really recommend being organized with your material. I have a page you guys can look at, and I have one right here. This is how I set up every single one of my exams when I studied for it. I got all of the resources that I felt I was going to be studying. I wrote it all down. I found out everything I needed to do, and I figured out how many hours I was going to study before I took the exam, and I started breaking it down. And every time I would finish something, I'd fill in a box, and it just kind of helped me see what I had already studied, what I haven't done yet, and it helped me when I'd finished chapters. And I did this for every exam, and then I had another page that had all of my quiz results. Or I don't think I have a slide of that. Oh yeah, I do. So here's every time I did a quiz from a Kaplan chapter or a final exam, I kept those pages, and I would do the answers, and I would mark the ones wrong, grade myself, and I would then go back and do some of these quizzes again. If I knew I was getting something, I got 3 out of 7, something bad, 4 out of 10, I would star them and go back and do that. I was very methodical in how I worked through the various resources until I felt I knew that material solid going into that exam room. Here's that cheat sheet that Thaddeus showed. General structures, all the formulas. And then you have your lateral structures. It is fantastic. This is pretty much the breadth of the calculations that you're probably going to find. You might not have any. You might have some of these. You might have others that are not on here. But this gives you a good guide of some of the things you're going to find. If you're looking at this and none of it makes sense, go through all those resources. Look back at this. Some of it will start making sense. By the time you take that exam, this should all make sense. So to kind of sum all of this up, 2 separate groups of 3 for these 6 exams. I still think there's the professional competence exams that I think should be taken in order. And again, that's 1, 2, and 6 in the order of kind of the life cycle. And then there's the technical competence ones, which would be the 3, 4, and 5. They seem to go together better, and that's just my opinion. Kind of going back to this thing of how do you break up structures. This is one of the reasons why you want to use some of these 4.0 resources and know kind of how it was broken up, because you really are going to have to probably study for structures, get ready for those 2 exams, and actually you're going to study for structures, study for building systems, study for materials and methods, then take the 1 exam, study it all again in another way, and take the 2nd exam. And because of that, because they've combined these technical exams, you don't have as many structural questions. You don't have as many building systems exams. So it is a little bit different. And some of the new study resources delve into it a little bit, but just if you've gone through the resources and really done a structural course, a building system course, you're going to be prepared for it, even if you only have 40 questions versus 80 questions of structural. So just know that there's less group memorization because there's less exams, so you probably won't have to do as many really technical parts of some of the questions. But since it's more about how you practice, some of these questions are now getting geared for how you actually would utilize them in an everyday practice sense. Be cognizant of your time when you're taking the exams, especially in regards to these case studies. It's very, very important that you don't lose track of time. If you need to check all questions that you want to review, get through all the questions as quick as you can reasonably so that you can go back and review stuff. Look at the breadth of what the case studies are. Do that. Go back. As long as you have time left on there, you can go back to questions. The key is you don't want to get bogged down on questions and all of a sudden find that you've spent 10 minutes on a question. You really should be spending a minute or 2 on a question. Get through it. Come up with your first gut reaction answer. Answer it. If you don't feel truly confident, mark it to review. Usually when I've done a full exam, I'd have 75% of the questions marked just because I wasn't confident. But that's 25 that I'm done with. Go back through, go through them again quickly, uncheck ones. Do it again, and if you have the time, keep going until you have none checked or you run out of time. But at least you've answered all the questions. A lot of times that first gut reaction is the one that you end up with, even if you've reviewed it 3 or 4 times. So use that practice exam to kind of get a sense of how you answer some of the questions on there. Again, start with the case studies to gauge the depth of that. Give a pass of all the questions, and then you could go back and tackle the case studies or vice versa. Again, that practice exam is extremely important. Develop your plan. Once you find out what starts working for you, hopefully you take something from what I've presented here as a way to help you organize some stuff. Use the resources out there to find how other people have studied for the exam. Talk to your peers and friends. And once you find something that starts working for you, stick to that and be very, very methodical with it. Take notes. Keep track of your hours. If you're very methodical about it early on, it'll help you kind of when you start feeling that life is getting in the way. If you know that these exams are taking this amount of time, it'll help calm you if you're the more, I think, the more organized and methodical you are, the more it'll ease your mind when you're working through this process. So again, pick one of those main study guides, or both if you have access to all of them. Use some of these specific resources, use those guides, and just pull it all together. Use videos, use your peers, put together kind of what works for you. But definitely, I think you can't really do it without having one of those main companies working with one of the guides, Ballast or Kaplan, and then kind of work down from there, because they'll give you the breadth of the knowledge that you need. Get a good night's rest, don't give up. Use everybody in this room, the chapters here, they have resources. There are people around that will have all the resources you need if you can't afford them or can't find them. So good luck. Now probably went over just a little bit. So do you guys want to take another break, or do you guys kind of want to get more into this kind of Q&A session?
I don't need a break.
What's that?
I don't
No,
need a
right?
break.
Okay. So there's a couple individuals that I have here who are going to come up to discuss, just to say who you are, what you kind of where you are in the process. And I want to just turn this into an open discussion. So you have some people who've already taken some exams. Some of you might have taken exams. I just wanted a couple people to come up here to kind of help me answer some questions about the process. Because there are some people who are closer to taking the exams than I am. I'm about 4 years away from my last exam. So and again, I haven't taken 5.0, so it's good to hear from some people who are either studying for it or really knee deep in it or have taken it. Come on and join me.
Thomas.
Start? Yeah, you can sit down.
Okay.
My name is Thomas Cicino. I went to Maryland, so I recognize a couple of you. I'm halfway through, and I walked in right when you were talking about the testing order. So I finished the 3 professional experience exams. So PCM, PJM, and CE, and I'm taking programming analysis on Monday.
Hi, I'm Melissa. I'm doing the 3+2, so I finished the three exams on ARE 4.0, and now I'm beginning to study to take the 2 on ARE 5.0.
So I will start. I'm going to ask a question. Hopefully you guys get in and ask questions. So did you start with 5.0? Did you do anything with 4.0 first?
No, I started.
So you purely started
5.0.
with 5.0. Is there any advice that you could give in regards to studying for it, maybe beyond what I kind of delved into here?
Oh, yeah. I think the most invaluable resource is the community online. Because anything I'm going to say from this point on, I just read from other people. You can go into any of the test sections, and people are like, what chapters of this book do I need to study? What chapters of this book? That's so invaluable. For 5.0, I've read that you shouldn't rely on third-party materials, and I don't like Ballast a whole lot. And there are some errors with Ballast compared to the Architect's Handbook of Professional Practice. So like when I read Ballast, it's more for like to get that general broad sense, but also if I see something that looks a little suspicious, then it's kind of a test to know that I recognize that it's wrong. And then Pluralsight, I don't know if you listed that anywhere in the presentation, but this guy from Texas, Kevin Grindling, has videos for the first 3, practice management, project management, programming analysis. And he has a video series to help you study for all of those, and I think they're super helpful too. Pluralsight is the website, and it's $29 a month. And Kevin Grindling is his name. But if you just Google like ARE study, whatever, you should be able to find it. And it's super helpful. Yeah, and then those are kind of like Ballast, I kind of review, but then I really rely on Pluralsight for the third-party material. But then other than that, I just rely on the primary sources in the handbook.
So one of the good things now is that this is the first time, and I mentioned it earlier, NCARB is actually working directly with third-party people. So those problems are starting to get fixed. They were way more in the past, but it's still, there used to not be those resources. So it actually is good. I wouldn't be surprised if Ballast and Kaplan eventually kind of went away, especially with like Black Spectacle sites like this. There's another guy, Young Architect, is a site that has lots of information, forum that there's access to a lot more information than there was even 4 years ago or so. So now with you, you're now studying for the 5.0 exams, where you have already taken some of the 4.0 exams. Is there any challenges that you're overcoming or information that you're finding to help with that process?
So I haven't started studying for
Okay.
5.0 yet,
Okay.
so I'm not going to touch on that. But the plan is to do that soon. I would say the most helpful thing to kind of push me to do that got me through the first 3 was just signing up for them. I know Mike said that, but it's so easy to put them off and to like give yourself an unlimited amount of study time. But I found setting a deadline that costs money, obviously, that was really helpful. I also really like Black Spectacles. I kind of went in with a few friends on a subscription, so that made helped the cost go down, and that also kind of gave me a sense of community, which is helpful. You need other people to encourage you to make it through.
All right. So again, we have somebody who's halfway through the 5.0, has a deep amount of experience with that, somebody who's delving into it, experience with 4.0. I, again, have taken all of them. What questions do you guys have, or is there any information you want clarified, or do you have any questions in regards to those exams specific or experience?
You guys, I haven't taken any exams yet. I plan on hopefully starting next year. My plan is to just kind of get through as much of the information as I can, just kind of read a little of everything. You guys suggest reading the specific material closer to the exam, or just kind of going through as much information as possible? I know it's harder to retain information, but I just kind of feel like it's stuff I should know anyway.
Are you like referring to reading a little bit from each different exam?
Yeah, like maybe read something on structure, just kind of go through as much as I can before I start taking them.
I would probably not
Or-
recommend that.
Yeah, don't recommend that.
Because the questions are so specific, and each of the exams focuses on different aspects of the material.
Mhm.
My opinion would be that would be really confusing.
So you find it's easier to hone in on with whatever test I want to take, just focus on that.
Now, if you know you're not going to be starting them for a full year and you want to do something in the meantime, don't focus on studying for an exam.
Mm-hmm.
Just focus on learning stuff that's going to help you with your career.
Mm-hmm.
Then, if you know you're not going to be doing anything, do something like the Architect's Handbook,
Mm-hmm.
where you can start learning or go through some of the contracts. Start learning stuff that your practice is doing. Relate some of the knowledge to what you're actually doing at work.
Mm-hmm.
So you're just learning. And then when you get to the point where you're ready to buckle down and focus, then you start delving in and really focus it. So, and again, if it's a year away before you know you're going to start, just use some of this information as kind of a framework of some of those general guides that could help you focus on your day-to-day practice.
I think one thing that could be helpful also would be to listen to like the shift harden lectures, because those are about the specific contracts that are applicable everywhere. And I found that to be really interesting because there are a lot of real world experiences that you talk about.
See, and then beyond those 4 lectures that focus on those 2, there's a whole course. So there's other lectures that deal with other legal aspects of the profession.
Mm-hmm.
You have an opportunity where most people don't have the time to delve that deep. You can listen to that whole course and get more out of it than somebody would otherwise.
Right.
Sorry, was that series that you're talking about in the presentation?
Shift hardened lectures. They're on the disc that I have.
Okay.
If you looked it up and that information, if you just look up shift hardened, SCHIFFHARDIN, you're going to be taken to like shift hardened architecture. Somehow you'll find that course, and it's invaluable.
Yeah. Some of them are helpful to like have the contract and that you have the contract in front of you, but some of them I also just listened to while I was driving.
And NCARB provides all the contracts, sample contracts that you would need for the exams. But if you go out and you buy the full version of the Architect's Handbook of Professional Practice or have it at your office, it'll have a disc with it that will actually have all the contracts available. And you probably can even get it from AIA. You can look to fine sample of all the contracts. Get the contract specifically related to that course and follow along. You don't want to just listen to it. If you're reading along, because he's going to go over word for word contract and then explain it in layman's terms.
Yeah, I would add to that. I think the link in your presentation said 2014.
Is there an even newer one?
Yeah, he has
Is there a
17. I listened to 16.
Okay.
But like for practice management, I listened to all of them at work just as background noise and listened to the 4, particularly about the contracts, with the contracts in front of me. And then I listened to them a second time for project management because they come back, and then a third time for construction evaluation. And that time I like actually outlined them while he was speaking. But yeah, I mean, they're super helpful.
And there's not a lot that changes them. I don't know if the newest version of those contracts is out. The contracts are revised. All the AIA, they're on 10-year cycles. So as long as you're within that last 10 years, there's probably not going to be much different on them. But yeah, definitely, I think I've had, like 2011 and 2014. I was done with it. So I didn't download the latest one. So at that point, go to Shiv Harden's website and you'll find the 17 version of the course. Might update some information or just have a better way to present it, as he's probably been teaching it for 15, 20 years.
You sound like you're doing it really quickly. Is that true? Did you do those?
I think I could be doing it quicker.
How quickly are you doing it?
I took 6 weeks for practice management. I started with the shortest one just because I thought it'd be easiest. And then practice management just led into the other 2, so now I have the 3 harder ones left, which kind of sucks. But so I did 6 weeks for practice management, 4 for project and construction evaluation. 6 weeks I've been studying for PA, and then on the online forum there's like a 2-month plus 2-week study program for the final 2 that I think I'm trying to have.
That's been similar for many, many, many years, regardless whether you're doing 3.1, 4.0, or 5.0. Kind of 6 to 8 weeks is generally what you can get by for a lot of the exams. In the older version where CDS was separated, that was one I think you could do in a condensed window because it was really laser focused on those 2 contracts. But for these 6 exams, 6 to 8 weeks, if you feel less comfortable on, say, structures, if it's stretched out to 10 weeks or so, depending on how you feel, but that can be a guide for you to schedule the exams. Is you can give yourself 6 weeks, schedule it 6 weeks out, 8 weeks out. If you're getting in and you're still within the window of being able to reschedule and you're not feeling as comfortable or life got in the way, push it out a little bit, but try to get an exam scheduled. And that's a very common 6 to 8 weeks. Now there's a guy, Charlie Klecka, I think that's how to pronounce his last name. He did all the exams, the 3 or 4 exams he did in a week. Graduated school
for 7 weeks, and then I just listened to that podcast. But it was like 7 weeks, and they took all 7.
Yes.
Yeah. But then there's another guy on the forum. His name is Mike O'Hara.
Okay.
Who passed all 6, 5.0 in 2 months.
Okay.
But he has considerable experience. I think like 15 plus years.
For each of you guys, with the way you studied, did you feel adequately prepared, and were you comfortable taking the exam? And I guess, did you pass? I mean, was it what you expected based upon what you studied?
No. I studied all the primary resources in the 5.0 handbook. And I think like the first couple of weeks I read through them and then I went back and reviewed. I skimmed them, but I took notes on them because I wanted to read them first and just kind of absorb it at a slower pace. But I think the way that the 5.0 exams rely less on memory and more on application and using the information, there's just no way to fully prepare yourself for all the situational questions that are on there. And I mean, I thought I was going to fail practice management, and then I passed, and I thought I was going to fail the other 2, and I passed. So it is what it is.
Yeah. You'll probably feel like you're going to, like you failed every single one of them.
Yeah.
When you leave, it's when you leave that and you feel like you aced it that you should probably worry.
Yeah, I have a similar experience. It's really hard to tell, and there are always a few curveball questions that are, you just look at them and you're like, how was that? That's how I felt. But overall, like, it matches up, but the application, some of them they're hard.
Yeah. But I mean, I think they're fair tests.
I think it's better the way that they're doing it now because it is not relying upon root memory. It's more experience in how you solve problems in relation to the content of that exam. Whereas the old exam, the curveballs would be you'd be taking the structures exam, and all of a sudden there's a building systems question on there that's absolutely not something that you've ever looked at it ever, and there's no way for you to know the answer for it. So you just look at it, go eeny, meeny, miny, mo, pick one and move on, and you don't sweat it when you get one. And I'm sure you're going to probably have at least one or two curveball questions on every one of them. Don't sweat it. Don't delve too much time on it because it might throw you off. Just answer it, check it, move on, go back to it. Maybe you can think about it later, and then they're also going to have questions on there that are not. I believe there are certain questions that are practice test questions that are not going to count towards your score. You'll never know what they are. They're testing questions, as any exam is going to have in this context, that are going to be curveballs to see whether they should be included as counting questions in the future.
How long your actual time that you sat for the exam? Do you feel like you ran out of time? Did you feel like you managed your time well? Like, was it shorter than you thought it was going to be? Or, you know what I mean, like when you actually got into the test itself?
I think I had adequate time for the first three.
Okay.
I've heard that there are problems on the other three with time, but the way I've approached it so far is the first 5 minutes, I go to the case studies to see what the references are, write those down, and then I jump back to the multiple choice, and as I'm going through those, I'm like, oh, question 54 needs the A201. That is a reference I have. So I'll mark that for later, look at the question, and then jump to the case study to look at the reference material, and then jump back to answer it if I need that. But I also wouldn't start answering the case study questions because there's only 20, they're worth 20 points, and then you have either 60 or 75 other questions to answer, and you only need 57 to 68% to pass. So it's just not worth it to do that, in my opinion.
That's a great opinion, and that's an opinion of a lot of people.
Yeah.
Read the case studies, familiarize with it, jot some notes down, go do everything else, and then come back to the case studies. The people who talk about having problems with time on these new exams, it's almost always because of the case studies. They get bogged down in the case studies. And I am coming from a 4.0 experience. I didn't feel I had any major issues. A lot of it was because of the fact that I relied upon the resources. There wasn't an ARE, there wasn't an NCARB forum at the time. I just had the ARE coach and ARE forum. But now you have multiple forums with people talking about them. You have a lot more people of information that you can get of time management. I felt I was prepared because I was listening to others, how they managed their time through it. Structures, I felt I was okay because I knew I needed to document information to go in that helped me. You have a process to get through the case studies so you can use others' knowledge and experiences to help focus you, and then you shouldn't have time.
I have a colleague that was in 4.0, and he was like, you can only take 1 minute on each question or something like that. And I was like, oh my God.
Yeah, I never felt that rush. I mean, sometimes the vignettes on 4.0, like you had to be conscious of the time, but it was fine.
Yeah, and that's where in the studying process, if you're doing some of these resources that give you lots of questions, if you do a bulk of them, give yourself X amount of time to answer questions so you start getting familiar, like you start getting used to reading a question, answering it. Even if it's a Kaplan guide and maybe those questions aren't going to be great for it, it's still going to prepare you for a bigger quantity because a lot of people haven't taken an exam in a long time. So you need to get used to having this amount of time, figure out if you have X amount of questions and you have this X amount of answers, you have X amount of time per question. Know that you want to review stuff, so use that as kind of a reference to say, I should be answering stuff in every minute and a half or so to know if you feel like you're starting to get bogged down, mark it and move on. Come back to it. You want to get through the whole thing with some time remaining to go back through it. And it's just a matter of doing that while you're studying. Do those calculations beforehand.
And also, like, for construction evaluation, I skipped every single hotspot, drag and drop, whatever. I reviewed that for the end, only answered the multiple choice, and then went back and started to answer those to make sure I had enough time. But I answered every question comfortably with like an hour left, and then I took my break. And then from that point on, I was just like burning time thinking about the question, making sure I didn't want to answer it a different way, and also didn't want to leave an hour early because that's just like bad karma. So I just kind of like sat there just like selecting through the questions that I wasn't 100% sure about. But yeah.
Any other questions?
Any specifics about the Prometric Test Center you found odd or tips and tricks?
I took 2 in DC and then 1 in Bethesda. I didn't have any problems at either one. Bethesda, you have to pay for parking, but you can pay with Park Mobile. But other than that, it was fine.
Yeah, they're all different. I've taken 1 in Bethesda, 1 in DC, and 1 in Virginia. So the scheduling is all different. Like each of the test centers will have different times available, and that's kind of why I ended up moving around, because some times are more convenient for me.
I took all mine when I was living in North Carolina. I found a site that was outside. I was in Raleigh. It was kind of outside of the city, so they always had availability. And what was great is there was this older gentleman who worked there. It was just really comfortable and easy. I just loved it. And again, I got there early. I made sure I had a lot of time before the exam, so I didn't have to be pressured with traffic or anything. When you're dealing with paying for parking and all that, maybe just factor that into your cost. But give yourself time. Get there so that you can be as relaxed as possible. And after you do your first time going through the process, I would suggest, if you can, stick with the same place, get a norm, get consistency down, and then the less variables you have to factor into it, the more comfortable you'll
So, are there penalties for answering question 1? We're gonna let some exam.
be. No. So make sure you answer them all. Yeah, you're better off giving it a shot. Even if you have no idea, answer something, mark it to look at later at the very, very end. If it's one of the last questions, just whatever the last one you have marked, let it go. Just don't leave them unanswered.
I had an after the question and answer session question.
Specifics.
Okay. I'll be around for a little while if you guys want to talk about it.
Yeah.
I'm sure they can answer questions. And if any of you have taken any of the exams or have some place around powwow, exchange information.
And I will follow up with an email with that contact information and with Michael's information again as well. And, see if there is some interest in people working together and moving forward.
Okay.
Well, thank you, Michael, and panelists for coming out and sharing your experiences with everyone. And thank all of you for coming out as well. If anybody wants to take anything to the road before you go. Thank you, Amir.
Of course.
Great.
That's great having that experience. Yeah. Through this process.
Is unless you bring it better. Like I had to take off like everything, like it's just wild. So I gotta watch it. So, yeah, it shows like cell phone ID.
I'm glad I didn't get it, but I would have it helped you more. I think you're
Somebody's sitting next to somebody with a
more well-rounded to solve problems.
Yeah.
Yeah.